Well, Kia ora, my name is Alice, and I am here with my friend Ian Young, and we just want to present the first episode, if I may put it that way, because we haven't done this before, of recording stories of church growing and what God is doing here in New Zealand. Let me give a little bit background of what this whole interview is all about. When I first moved to New Zealand about 8 years ago, I was confronted with a narrative of how hard a ministry ground New Zealand is. And I do acknowledge there's a difficulty sometimes in how we share the gospel. But this narrative was specifically about dying churches. The vibe in the streets was that evangelism is hard. Churches are dying. The congregations are older. The young people have a massive exodus, from the churches and, pretty much not even bothering. I started witnessing churches closing down. Not long after we moved to New Zealand, I remember being part of a conversation with a church that was strategizing the best way to close down. And this narrative is sad and depressing. But fast forward, and just about 3 years ago, I took up a role with the New Zealand Church Missionary Society as the intercultural ministry enabler, which is a role that equips the churches to do missions right here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And in this role, I had the privilege of talking to many churches that I wouldn't have otherwise had a reason to talk to them, other than the fact that now I'm introducing myself and I want to work alongside them. And I started hearing a different narrative. I started meeting people who have stories of churches that are growing and thriving. And I started thinking, wait a minute, have we been experiencing a lie all along? Are there stories, not just of dying churches, but stories of resurrection within the churches that have gone unnoticed? And this is our first attempt to capturing one such story of a church that is experiencing growth and seeing God at work right here in Aotearoa. And so let me introduce Ian Young.
Kia ora, Alice.
Ian, very welcome. Just very stoked that you're here. Very stoked that you're our first person to interview for this series. Kindly tell us just a bit about yourself.
Kia ora to everyone that is listening to this. I am just so privileged, totally in the same boat with Alice. Be able to do this for the first time. It's not just Alice. This is truly my first time telling story in this way, in this context. I'm not new to New Zealand, but my root is Malaysia. I'm a Malaysian-born Chinese, so I should really properly greet you by saying "Apa khabar." There's a Malay way of greeting you.
And how do you respond when you see it?
You simply normally, just like, any Kiwi person would say, good, I'm very good. You basically respond by khabar baik. So apa khabar literally mean what news, and khabar baik in response, you say good news, or news is good. Khabar baik.
Khabar baik. Thank you, I've learned.
And again, I'm sort of hybrid. I'm Malaysian Chinese, so I also grew up in a very Chinese upbringing in Malaysia. So we are Chinese diaspora in Malaysia. So my grandparents immigrated from China to Malaysia way back. So I'm the second generation Malaysian-born Chinese, and came to New Zealand in 1991, quite a few years back. And I been going to church, a very particular Methodist church, as a nominal Christian. So I literally go to church every Sunday, but have no faith, no interest in knowing God. We just basically, that's what we do on Sunday. We just attend churches until I came to New Zealand. And long story short, I became a Christian. I was born again in this lane of milk and honey. And ever since then, I've been going to a Chinese church that is right by Auckland University. That's in very close proximity to St. Paul's Church. That was way back. I wasn't even aware of there's a church called St. Paul's back then. And I've been in that church for 15 years and it's a very Chinese, kind of Chinese church. And I felt very belong, and this is my people, and this is how we worship as Christian, as Chinese Christians for 15 years. And somehow God sort of draw me and my family out of that Chinese church. There's more to the story, but really just planted us in the Anglican church. And then that led to St. Paul's recently.
Now, I like that part because I was just going to ask you, how did you end up then at St. Paul's Church, Simmons in Auckland?
Oh man, this is I think one word that is quite appropriately and describe it is mystery. And because there's a lot of scenario that happened prior to me coming to St. Paul's that really at the human level it is not going to happen, because I'm just finished my placement or my ministry at another church, and I'm sort of waiting in limbo. And at the same time, St. Paul's at the time is going through a transitioning, they call it interregnum. So they don't have a leader, they don't have a vicar at that time. So a recommended mode of operation for churches, especially Anglican churches, is to just hold the space, just maintain what's been going on. Don't try to do something too radical. Just maintain the sheep, so to speak, until the new chief or the new vicar arrive. So they are not in the position to take new priests like myself into their team at the time. But God have a amazing way, and He knows better. And they really very willingly, I think there is another word, mystery, and then willingly they took the challenge and they took the risk, really, having me on for a year. And then yeah, that lead to now I'm actually at St. Paul's a year and a half. So I'm still here doing what I'm doing. That's phenomenal.
That is incredible for that to have happened in a seasons where they were not expecting to have any radical change in the church leadership or structure, and they ended up inviting you in that space. You almost think God wanted you there, isn't it?
That felt very much so. And even today, I'm still at St. Paul's from time to time. I still have to pinch myself, so to speak, asking, how did I end up at St. Paul's again? Because it is just, yeah, there's such a reminder that God is here, God is doing it, and all that we can offer is open and willing.
I know one of the things you do at St. Paul's is this incredible ministry that you have towards the students. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, to describe to us the setting. Where is St. Paul's, and what are the ministry opportunities that you have around St. Paul's? And then tell us how that led to you getting involved to the ministry with the university students.
St. Paul's is the very first church building, as far as I understand, in Auckland CBD, in Auckland Central. So very first church building, and the geographic of it, I don't know, people might have planned, I know that other people might not have, to locate St. Paul's church building in this on Simon Street with Auckland Hospital, about a kilometers distance-wise, I think it's 500 meters, so it's very close. But again, Auckland roading and all that crazy, it is 1 point something kilometers, very close by. At the other end, there's got High Court, and then there is all this central district, business district all around us. And then the main thing is two major University of New Zealand, Auckland University and AUT, left and right. We are one street across from each other, right bang in front of our doorstep, literally. Wow. And then there's a lot of other international language sort of institution and other training centers all around. So this is where we're located, and this is such a field of opportunity for us to be church.
I can almost hear the hustle and bustle of the city, and the church is strategically placed just right there. Now,
As
tell us a little bit about the ministry with the university students, because that's quite unique what you're doing there at St. Paul's.
now this again, although I'm new here, but again, this ministry of providing free lunch has been going on for 8 years at least, if not 10 years. Different people, a different version, and it's not even started by St. Paul's. It is actually other people from other churches that spotted St. Paul's as a strategical location for doing something for the community, and in particular, the international students way back. Or when I arrived at St. Paul's about a year ago, I still vividly remember first week when I, after the orientation week, the first Wednesday, because it happened on a Wednesday, when we opened the door, there's about 50 students that arrived. So it's amazing. And we didn't actually have much of expectation. We ran out of food halfway through.
How many students had you prepared for?
We probably prepared about 20, 30.
Okay.
Just be very humble, very modest. We're thinking, okay, we're just going to come back and just test the water. So we're just going to prepare for about 20, 30 food portion. And then, so we got 50, amazing. Back then, imagine that there's no people around for almost 2.5 years, if not 3 years. And then we're back. So the first week that happened, and we say, man, this is such a good problem, bring it on. And then the next week, we prepare for about 50 to 80, and we ran out of food again because 100 students came. Because I counted because of running out of the food first week, so we want to make sure that we will be more prepared for the coming weeks. And then so that is second week, so we ran out of the food. Amazing, we celebrate again, saying, wow, there's something is going on. And then the third week, we prepare for about 150. We ran out of food again. I think by then we have about 200, if not more, between 200 to 300 students. I basically lost count. After I counting for about 220 on there, I said, okay, I'm not gonna count anymore. So there are a lot of students line up. So, and ever since then, we fluctuated between 50 when there's a semester break, from about 50 to 300 then about, and there are long queues of students coming in. And yeah, it is amazing, because I think the thing that we try to do at my time when I'm here, it is very important for us to be true to the genuineness of providing free lunch. And we basically do that with no string attached. We want to provide, love our neighbors, which are our students, with free lunch, with free grace. We don't say that it's free grace, we say it's free lunch, and it is actually interchangeable and it is tangible for students to come in. It's amazing how many students that never walk into a church building from different parts of the world, that they walk into this St. Paul's church building with free lunch, because they ask, hey, we heard that we've been told that there's no free lunch. They say, but why are you guys doing this? And we just say, because you are our neighbors.
I like those statistics where 1 week you're planning for 20, 30 people and 50 show up, and then you double that number and the number doubles over what your expectation was. And just hearing those numbers are staggering, and it is incredible. I always believe, Ian, that we really do minister from where we are, because God has planted you there for a reason. And St. Paul's is just right there. And the reason that God has planted you there is because of the people. And that phrase, you share food with the students because you love your neighbors.
That's right.
Now, tell us a little bit about how you have been able to see and to utilize that space for the sake of the gospel. I understand there is a way that it's been done previously that you felt, that was not a good Christian witness, but also something changed, and an idea struck your mind that you sensed God had placed in your heart to move that space as an evangelism space in a different direction. I would love to hear that fascinating story.
Yes, we have this coming into the scene on board this movement or this ministry after that's been going on for 10 years. You're asking for trouble, and I can smell it when I come into this scene as one of the leaders of St. Paul's. And initially, when I first arrived on the scenes of Wednesday lunch, there are just multiple churches are involved. There are volunteers, and they are very faithful people that have been doing this for years. And they do have the best of intention to share gospel and gospel track and personal testimony. You name it, they got it. And they are very serious about it. And then when I arrive, I'm sort of just observing and witnessing people, volunteer Christians come to help, and then they provide food, and then they sit down and talk to our students. And I ask myself the questions: are we providing free lunch and sincerely, or are we providing free lunch and then expect something else happen? So I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable with that, putting myself in the students' shoes, and be aware that I myself used to be an overseas student, new migrants to this country. Language is a bit shaky, and I'm not sure how to really weave myself into this culture. So I sort of have to listen, have to just do whatever people offer me. That sort of vulnerability. So we have this ministry to a vulnerable, beautiful people, students that come to this country with hopes and with trust and with level of sincerity. So how do we provide a duty of care to them? So I sort of come up with these sort of questions to myself, and then offer it to the whole team of volunteers, saying that, why don't we provide this Wednesday student lunch sincerely as that, full stop, no string attached, free student lunch. So our goal is providing with love, providing free student lunch. And then if we're going to do anything, is to listen to them, hold our guns, and not present whatever we think we should and we would like to present, is to just listen to them. If we're going to sit down, engage in that, which we do, which is great. And then from that is what the space is about the students. It is to provide free lunch sincerely. If students come in, they grab their lunch and they enjoy it, our goal is 100% achieved. We have made it. This is, we've done our ministry. So over sort of last year, this student lunch space become a huge capture of people, students, and community coming into this space and make this space a student space, sincere, honest. And because of that, more and more students, return. They come back and they invite new friends. And even just yesterday, there was someone on the flight to somewhere in the airport, and the destination is in Auckland. And one of the students that these passengers happened to meet on the flight knew about St. Paul's free student lunch. And we didn't do any marketing other than just put a sandwich board at front, say free student lunch. So I think it works, just genuinely providing this space for students wholeheartedly with no string attached. And then from that,
just Ian, as you go on, I really love what you're saying there, because that's an amazing fundamental Christian principle that we overlook. When you're inviting somebody for lunch and you have a hidden agenda, it's not a genuine invitation for lunch, is it? There's a selfishness attached to it. And you just said, come on, guys, let us invite people for lunch and let it be lunch.
absolutely.
So the students can come. And I really like that. It's such a fundamental principle. We don't have to bombard people and make them feel like we are literally after them.
That's right.
When you put on the free lunches, you get these people who come that are from other parts of the world. and they're probably struggling with relationships. It's a new context, language is a new issue. And so you said, if you just start giving them your agenda, they feel vulnerable and they might feel politely inclined to agree with you, not necessarily because they're convicted, but because they want to be hospitable to you, or they want to play good guest, for lack of a better way of putting it. Does that sound accurate, what you're saying?
As we know, I totally agree, because we've been thinking that through and still thinking that through openly, willingly, that power dynamic. What are we doing here as churches? Over the years in church history have sort of confirmed that as we go out and serve people and serve our community wholeheartedly, this sort of zeal for the gospel is amazing. But again, we need to be aware that there is power dynamic, and especially with different contexts. In my context, for the student lounge, it is people mainly from international, from Asian country, Chinese sort of culture and all that. It is very, very hierarchical. So if you come into this sort of church building, that is phenomenal, mysterious way that God has already drawn people, such a brave bunch of students that willing to step into this space that they are so unaware and so foreign to them. That's already a miracle. There's already God at work. So we need to see that, appreciate that, acknowledge that, and then just hold it gently. So, and as the students sort of come into this space, because of we are the host and they are the sort of guests, so we need to be very careful how we want to let them know that this is actually a reverse. Our upside down, turn the world upside down, and an upside down system, that we here to serve you. Yes, we look like a host, and hopefully over weeks and over a few Wednesday, you will soon find out that is our hope and our prayer that they can come in here and make this their home. They will become hosts, and I think it is happening because of our genuine and that sort of free will offering. It is very convicting, and the students have started to trust and started to know that, wow, this is no string attached, and they started to tell others and started to invite others because they are comfortable and their friends will be comfortable. So that is how this and how it came to be. It wasn't like that when I first started, but
Wow.
because of openness and willingness and willing to just trust God a bit, because church is quite unfortunately a program driven. They will always have to know where we're heading and why we're doing this, and we need to be good steward and all that. Absolutely fine. But I think God, if we're willing to take a bit of risk and be challenged and be willing to change a bit, even our thinking, especially I think our thinking of how we're going to serve different people at different time, then I think God would show us his way, and which is better as far as I'm concerned.
I agree 100% with what you've just shared. What an inspiring story. And now you've met those people, you're feeding them week after week, you've changed the culture from, running after them and just bombarding them to let's be open, let's be welcoming. And you said, importantly, let's just be listeners. And you said it is working. People are finding St. Paul's and that community of lunch, that space, to be a place that they can call home. They're feeling more settled. How have you then developed that space to become an environment through which now you can move to the place where you can safely, gently, but also, again, genuinely share the gospel, because you felt now this is a genuine space to bring the gospel to the people?
So without compromising the genuine free lunch ministry, no string attached, which is that. So we need to guard that very sincerely and continuously. But at the same time, as we spend time and as we sit and eat together as church and as students, relationship form because of trust, because of that genuine relationship. And the constant reminder is, if the students have no interest about church and no interest about what your faith is, would you still love them?
Mm.
And the answer is always yes. We love them because God loved us first. All this, um, our faith and our theology understanding. This is who God is and how we come to know God. And we want to present God as love, which is unconditional. So as we do that, over time, these students will open up and they will want to ask questions. For example, the most basic question, it doesn't even need to wait. They will come in first time, they will start to ask, why are you guys doing this? Why are who is paying for this? And all that. So I think that is a great opening. And then we don't, with that, all kind of conversation will start. And then all kind of invitation will start. But again, that is not given. That is not our goal. Our goal is to feed our students, provide free lunch, and that's it. But then it just naturally you can't help that as we eat together, as we keep um, spending time week in, week out, relationship forms, and the church now St. Paul's have started after last year of forming this culture of no string attached. Then um, then there is also another opportunity that we move into, which is the Chinese Alpha.
Tell
Now,
us a
Alpha has
little
been
bit
going on.
about that, because that is another interesting story, Ian.
That's right. And timing, talking about really timing what God is doing, Alpha has been going on for years. But Chinese Alpha is something quite new. It's 100% contextualized and all that. So it started, I think, 2 years back when New Zealand first started launching Chinese Alpha. So St. Paul started uh, offer Chinese Alpha. And so people that get to know each other and they want to show very clear interest of what is church about? Why is church so nice and so kind? And I want to find out more genuinely. And people do come and we invite them to Chinese Alpha. So last year we have about 30 people. I mean, we plan for 30, but in fact there are 40, maybe even 45 on the list. So we had to put people on waiting list last year when we did the first Chinese Alpha, and people came to it and they went through Alpha. And again, very similarly, Alpha is we find Alpha very, very helpful is because it is about food, it's about loving, and then it is uh, listening. And yes, we by the time people come to Chinese Alpha, we do present the gospel in the very sort of strict understanding way, which is in the comprehensive way of presenting the gospel to them. And then, so they listen, and they also be listened to at the group discussion part, which is the best part, I would say. That is when you hear all the questions and where they are from and how they view Jesus. Most of them had no idea who Jesus is, and they're so open and so willing. So throughout that, so at St. Paul's last year, we done first Chinese Alpha. So 30 odd students came through, and about 10 of them went to the weekend, and 6 of them ended up pray to want to receive Jesus.
Wow.
So they did. And we baptized 3 this year at Palm Sunday. So that is the fruit of a bit of patience, a bit of funneling from the student lunch, and then lead them into the Alpha course. And then from Alpha course, baptizing into the church. And some of them today, they are serving back in the Wednesday lunch. And because of that, the church is reformed. St. Paul actually have a small group called New Life to disciple these new Christians in the bilingual context, because we want to help them to really improve their English. So we mainly use English, but again, most of the people in there speak another language and mainly Chinese. So we have bilingual context, small group happening at the same time. So this is how church could really help our people, our community to find their way into the church and to call not just Wednesday lunch, not just a course, but the church, their home, their spiritual home.
Yes, and eventually call Christ their savior. Amen to that story. Ian, what I love the progress, you called it it's like a funnel, like a filtering process where many will come And then the Lord will lead some to come into that space where they can go through an alpha course. Ian, you are a Malaysian-born Chinese, and you are in that space, and you're seeing lots of Chinese students coming through in for lunch. Would you say that specifically, Lord, the Lord brought you here for such a time as this? Do you feel like the person that you are is very instrumental to the ministry that you're doing?
Even before St. Paul's, when I first came into ministry and I struck a conversation with a person that came to church for very first time. And our conversation is not about the gospel, not about Savior, Jesus Christ. Our conversation landed on this topic of, I immigrated to this country many, many years ago, and this friend of mine that I just met have came into this country for a few weeks. And something that we ended up encourage and remind each other is that, yes, we come to New Zealand as an immigrant from wherever country. For me, from Malaysia, we hold so much culture, so much richness that happened before New Zealand. And then in New Zealand, we tend to lose a bit of that slowly. For example, I changed my name from my Chinese name to Ian. And I'm so used to Ian now that I forgot almost that, I actually got my passport name as a Chinese character. That sort of things. And then as we move into this country, we get blessed with all this culture and language and way of life, which is good as it is. But if because of that we lose my Malaysian Chineseness, we actually do a disfavor. We need to hold on because of this cultural sort of differences. We need to refine who we are first without losing that as we continue to come in and to see and to pick up and to learn and to be a Kiwi New Zealand, for me, a Malaysian Chinese living in New Zealand way of who I am, so that people get to see who a Malaysian Chinese is, so that they get to see that image of God. I mean, we all create the image of God in a different tone, in the nuances. There's always good and bad in all cultures, challenges and blessings. So if we can share more equally, more mutually, I think this is the word that I picked up recently, especially if I joined NZCMS, the mutuality. I didn't use that language back then when I had that conversation, but again, it is like that. We need to refine who we are and be reminded who we are, and to bring that on board fully or more as we go, as we encounter and as we experience the new culture in this land of New Zealand, Aotearoa.
Wow. Wow. It's incredible. Ian, I want to take you back to something that you said a little bit earlier, and you said it in passing, but I think it's very important to capture that because it explains a little bit about your approach to how you build relationships intentionally and also your approach to evangelism. You said, long story short, you became a Christian and you became born again, but you do have a very unique way, a unique story of where you are and how that happened, that you gave your life to Christ. Tell us just, if you can capture that briefly, where and how you became a Christian, and then just show us how that then influences why you do ministry the way you do.
Let me start by a bit of going back to at the beginning of our conversation that I grew up going to church every Sunday, but nominal, which means that I just physically go to church and then leave church every Sunday without engaging, without even any heart level either understanding or let alone believe. So I have very little, if any, interest in terms of knowing God more. So I've been doing that for years until the age of 19. So I came to New Zealand. The whole family migrated to New Zealand. And in this sort of new chapter in my life, I decided to do something that is quite important at the time, which is to define my faith by turning away from Christianity, by stop going to church. So I tell myself, from today onward, no more church. I will stop calling myself, identify myself as, or name myself, or categorize myself as a Christian. But at the same time, this voice in my head, there's no voice, it's just a thought that unless or what if God exists, then he will have to come to me. He will have to present himself. So I left that thought there and go my merry way of becoming a non-Christian, I suppose. And within a period of 2 weeks, I remember vividly as I still wrestling back on my mind with these questions of, does God actually exist? It wasn't conscious at all. It's really subconscious. A few things happened. I met a few interesting people. And the night before my birthday, I went to a KFC restaurant near my house at the time. I went to have my pre-birthday KFC meal. And as I was sitting there with a friend talking our life away, sharing life and all that, I still remember not just the date, but even the time, the location and the time. It was at 8:30 at the table upstairs at this KFC restaurant, having my KFC with my friend. And I felt this sense of peace, joy. It's almost, and now looking back, it's like someone turned on the switch on the inside and the light bulb just turned on. That joy and that freedom and that newness that I cannot describe even now. And back then, I physically I remember that I was just laughing. I can't stop laughing. My muscle, my cheek just sort of has a life of its own, and I'll just keep from deep down. I just keep laughing. I never had that sort of joy before, and I know that something changed. I know that it must be God. And then I remember I went out, bought my very first Bible in the next day or two, and I devoured the whole Bible from cover to cover within 2 weeks, which I try ever since. That I try to repeat that even as a as a clergy person now, as a priest. I couldn't do that anymore. So it was a phenomenal experience back then. And because of that, just coming back to how they informed me, God is everywhere, and God can use all things, even KFC restaurants, even a pre-birthday meal for someone that I don't know how this agnostics or people that not interested at all. But it's just maybe half-hearted openness. God can use that. If God can do that, then God can do that with any churches, no matter even if you have 5 people now, even if you have 500 people now, God is at work. If we dare to be open and to be willing to give it a go and to just let it happen.
Oh, I love that story, Ian. And as you're sharing, I'm just smiling so hard. And yes, I can feel my cheek muscles engaging because it is such a beautiful story. And I can just see the connection of, just the freedom to allow God to meet people where they are at, food connected in ministry and evangelism. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. And this is probably the same story other people are experiencing as they're coming to St. Paul's and having these lunches and a space to laugh, maybe, and that space to just eat and be loved and be listened to by the people around you. Now, Ian, you've been there for just a year and a half, loving people, feeding people, experiencing transformation, seeing people getting baptized, coming back to serve at the church, especially with the lunch ministry. How has that changed over the last 1.5 years in your experience? Has that changed both the outlook of the church, the mood of the church, the composition of the congregation, the energy levels of the church? Do you want to give us just a snippet of the impact of this lunch ministry is having to the rest of the congregation in your church?
New faces, new life, and new hope. in a nutshell, really. And there are so many, I think when you have new people come into your church, even just one, that impact, that has got dynamic. And don't underestimate that one person or that one change. And that really go back to, to St. Paul's, over the 180 odd years of St. Paul's history. I've been told, again, I haven't verified it, but I sort of believe that those people who say this, I'm their first non-Pakeha European English-speaking clergy or priest or minister at St. Paul. So it is a huge boldness. This is not something that St. Paul has been formulated, has been put together. It is something that has been dropped in the middle, in the most inconvenient time, and they took me in. Huge risk. So I think that is it. When you do that, things start to happen, one thing after another, and you just need to allow that and do your best to keep up with it and newness. So even just this month, for the last 4 Sundays, people like me that are new to St. Paul's, fair enough, everyone's new, pretty much. But again, we have people that been at St. Paul's for 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, telling me there's so many new faces coming into the church. So now we have a good problem again.
Nice.
How do we serve them? How do we connect with them? How do we disciple them? How do we gel with them? How do we create more new small group and all that to form more community and more deeper relationship?
Wow, that is a very, very good problem. Ian, before we wrap up, I just want to hear just from your heart, what inspires you when you think about the future of the New Zealand church?
2 words that came to mind that has been floating around at St. Paul's, and I capture that in particular, that is humble and hopeful, really. Humble is, we don't need to be sort of extraordinary. Just be true to who you are, what you've got. And then there is hope, and there is genuine hope. And I live in this sort of in between, that humility and also that hopefulness of God is doing or have been doing, and he will continue to do. And God loves people. And as long as we got nothing else, and we just be aware that, if now it is quite rare, love today, even kindness today. There is a lot of loneliness out there. Now, if church can be true, we don't need to pretend. We don't need to sort of try to hype ourselves up, try to be somebody else. We just need to be ourselves. Even hold our sorrow, hold our whatever season that we're in, to do that well and to do that sincerely. But at the same time, don't lose hope. And that hope that God is still at work, and God is at work, and that is non-negotiable. Then we will go a long way. That in itself is so attractive and so life-giving, and people will just draw to that, I think. So church is a place of genuine people, real people like me, like you, Alice, and whoever is listening. We don't need to be anything else. We just need to be who we are, but at the same time, invite God's hope and all the goodness of God into the space. It's pretty simple, but again, it really calls for faith and boldness to hold that tension well.
Amen. 2 powerful words, humble and hopeful. I think that is a brilliant takeaway. And Ian, just listening to both your story, how God is using you, but also hearing what God is doing at St. Paul Simmons, I am convinced that God just uses us just as we are. And he uses us just right there where we are and with just what we have. And so that word humble, we don't have to be anything else, and hopeful, because definitely God is at work, is a good message for the New Zealand church. What a blessing it's been having this chat with you, Ian. I look forward to seeing what God will continue doing, both at St. Paul Simmons, but also around the Oakland region as you continue to serve Him faithfully. Thank you for today, and God bless you.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah, amen to that. Absolutely.